Students, this is SriRam Shastri. I welcome you to the video session that is continuation of the chapter Biodiversity and its conservation. This is a chapter in your environmental studies syllabus. So we'll be talking today about the conservation of biodiversity and the methods of conservation of biodiversity. Along with that, we'll also be talking about what is the percentage of biodiversity found in India. So firstly, we'll start with this part, that is conservation of biodiversity. So conservation of biodiversity, if we talk about very clearly here, we can conserve biodiversity in two ways, that is in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. In situ conservation is a situational conservation of natural resources, that is without any artificial changes, the nature is protected as usually. That means a natural habitat without any disturbance is conserved as it is in the form of nature itself. Okay, so it includes declaring protected areas as national parks or wildlife sanctuaries or biosphere reserves. Okay, so there are numerous biodiversity regions in our India that we had discussed earlier in the class session itself. Okay, so there are numerous national parks. We can take examples of national parks in India. Okay, you can take famous national park like Kaziranga National Park, Gir National Park, Dachigam National Park, Kanha National Park. Okay, so these are some of the famous national parks in India which are being declared as protected areas. There are many. I have just given some examples. So wildlife sanctuaries are there. A lot of wildlife sanctuaries are also being declared as protected areas in India as well as in the world also. Okay, so these are all in situational conservation, that is within the natural habitat the conservation program has been continued, and so it is called as in situ conservation. So biosphere reserve is also same. If we talk about ex situ conservation is outside the natural environment, conservation of nature outside its natural zone. That means with the help of human interference or human intelligence we are conserving something, then we call it as ex situ conservation. So it includes cryopreservation. Cryopreservation is preservation of certain seeds, cells or tissues of animals and plants in liquid nitrogen at minus 190 degrees Celsius. Okay, so cryo means cold preservation. So there are gene banks are there, seed banks are there, tissue organ banks are there. They conserve the what you call as genome of certain animals and plants which are under the threat of extinction. So ex situ conservation first is what I said is cryopreservation or frozen zoo, what you call as. Secondly, you can take example of botanical gardens. Thirdly, you can take examples of zoos or zoological gardens where animals are protected inside the human guidance. So that is ex situ conservation, that is outside their original natural habitat. Then if we talk about the important rules and regulations which we can continue with IUCN. What is IUCN is International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. According to IUCN, in a natural habitat or in a region where biodiversity is high, at least 5% of the ecosystem should be declared as a protected area. At least 5% should be declared as a protected area in normally biodiversity rich regions. But if it is very sensitive, if it is a hot spot where species diversity is reducing day by day or it is under the threat of destruction, then it can be up to 10% of the area can be declared as a protected area. Minimum 5% of ecosystem, maximum 10% of the ecosystem can be declared as a protected area. In India, it accounts for around 3.5% area is protected area declared by the Indian government. So the percentage of the area which is a protected area in our country is just 3.5%. Now continuing with the topic, that is nothing but what is India and sorry, not about country, we are talking about biodiversity in India and what are the different factors related to it. So India has three important biodiversity hotspots. Now what is a hotspot? Hotspot is a region where high endemism is being recorded but they are under the threat of destruction because of human activities, because of poaching, because of deforestation, because of so many activities. It can be under the threat. So those areas which have high species richness and they are having a threat of destruction, then we call it as biodiversity hotspots. Now in biodiversity hotspots in India, we have northeast part of India, Western Ghats in India, and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. These three regions are having highest endemism. Endemism means the species which have originated in that geographical region and belong to that geographical region, and they are not found anywhere else in the world. Such species are called as endemic species, and that property is called as endemism. Okay. So now, if you talk about the total diversity which India contributes for plants and animals is around 6.5% of the total world's biodiversity. But now again, if you take the percentage of plants which has been contributed is 7% of the plant diversity, 6.4% of animal diversity is the contribution of percentage of diversity found in India with respect to world's total diversity. Now, India has around 33% of endemic plants, 14% of world's avifauna, that is birds. Avifauna means birds. 14% of the birds species are endemic to India. 50% of lizard species are endemic to India. 62% of amphibians are endemic to India. Endemic means they are found only in India biologically. They are not found anywhere else. They belong to this particular geographical region. Okay. So 33% of plants, 14% of birds, 50% of lizards, 62% of amphibians. Now if you talk about the world's major biodiversity hotspots. World's major biodiversity hotspots include Northeast India, Western Ghats, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Sri Lanka, that is Malayan Peninsula, Indo-Malayan Peninsula, you can call it as North Borneo Islands, and Philippines. These are the regions which are considered as hotspots which are under the threat of destruction. So these are there are many other what you call as regions also, but these are the most important one where destruction is higher. Now the region where the population of human beings is higher, there are always a threat of conflicts between nature and human, and there are chances that there is more and more destruction with respect to what you call as human and nature interference, right? Now this topic is the end part of the chapter called biodiversity and its conservation. Here whatever is important I have been discussing it here itself. Okay, so you have to remember the examples of this. I have not quoted here much, but you can just refer any textbooks and you can remember a lot of examples are there. Any most important examples of state-wise and country-wise, some of the famous regions you can remember. So if you talk like biosphere reserve, the oldest biosphere reserve, if you talk about the oldest or the first biosphere reserve declared in India is Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, which is between three states, that is Karnataka, Kerala and Tamil Nadu. That is Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve is one of the oldest biosphere reserve in India. There are 14 biosphere reserves in India other than Nilgiri, right? Only place for Indian rhino, Kaziranga National Park is the only place where Indian rhino is found. Like only place for Asiatic lion, Gir National Park is the only place where Asiatic lion is found. These are some of the important examples I am quoting. You can take furthermore examples from your text also. So basic idea of preparing this video is to give you a confirmed what you call as figures and important points regarding the topic called conservation and biodiversity in India. I hope you might have understood it very clearly. For today we'll stop this video here itself. In the next video session we'll continue with the next topics of environmental studies. Thank you.